Behind the laughter of children and the quiet rhythm of everyday life, there are stories that remind us how fragile trust can be. Stories that challenge us to look deeper into our systems, our relationships, and ourselves. This is one such story. It begins not with headlines or courtrooms, but with a child named Dericka, a young life full of promise, questions, and unseen struggles. Dericka Chavonne Lindsay was just 9 years old, a child with dreams too young to fully form and laughter too bright to fade. She was living with her adoptive parents in Pensacola, Florida, a setting not unlike countless households across America. To the outside world, it was an ordinary life. Yet inside that home, daily routines were tinged with challenges that few could see. Dericka's story reminds us that children can struggle in ways they cannot fully express, and that those entrusted with their care carry an immense responsibility, one that calls for patience, empathy, and support. On a Saturday morning in October 2017, a series of decisions would lead to tragedy. When Dericka's behavior was seen as difficult by her caregivers, her adoptive mother reached out to a relative for help. That relative, Veronica Green Posey, arrived at the home. What followed was a moment that would forever change multiple lives. Investigators later determined that Dericka, amidst discipline, was made to stay in a position that prevented her from breathing comfortably. Dericka expressed difficulty breathing, a plea that, tragically, went unanswered in time. Despite efforts to summon medical help, Dericka did not survive. News reports at the time noted that first responders transported the child to a local hospital where she was pronounced dead. Authorities would go on to explore every facet of what happened that day and what decisions led to this heartbreaking outcome. In the wake of Dericka's death, law enforcement and child welfare officials took swift action. They examined the scene, spoke with witnesses, and reviewed statements from those present. What emerged was a troubling picture, a system of punishment that escalated beyond what any child should ever endure. Veronica Posey was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, the highest level of criminal accountability in such cases, and later convicted by a jury. The court handed down a sentence of life in prison, reflecting the gravity of the outcome. The adoptive parents, Grace and James Smith, also faced charges. James Smith accepted responsibility for his role and received a 10-year sentence. Grace Smith's case has been complicated by health issues that have affected her ability to participate in court proceedings. Throughout the investigation and trial, prosecutors highlighted not only the incident itself, but the pattern of physical discipline that had occurred in the days leading up to the girl's death. This broader context became central to understanding how the tragedy unfolded. To understand a tragedy like this, we must look at human behavior under stress. Parenting, especially when managing a child's challenging actions, can push caregivers into emotional and psychological strain. But strain is not an excuse for harm. When adults assume the role of protectors, they must navigate frustration without placing a child in danger. Experts in developmental psychology emphasize that children, particularly those with emotional or behavioral difficulties, require caregivers who are trained, patient, and supported by professionals. A lack of resources, understanding, or guidance can lead to misjudgments, moments where good intentions are overshadowed by harmful actions. In Dericka's case, the applied discipline reflected a breakdown in judgment, empathy, and restraint. It shows us the importance of educating caregivers and expanding access to support systems like counseling, parenting programs, and community services that focus on safe, positive strategies for child development. This was not a story of malicious intent, but of a decision made in a moment with irreversible consequences. And it invites each of us to reflect. How can we better prepare and support families so that frustration never becomes tragedy? The reverberations of Dericka's death extended beyond a courtroom in Florida. Her case drew national attention to the challenges of child discipline, the responsibilities of caregivers, and the role of the justice system in protecting society's most vulnerable. In legal circles, the outcome reaffirmed the principle that actions, even when framed as discipline, must never place a child at risk. It also sparked conversation about how child welfare agencies assess and intervene in families already known to local authorities. Parenting advocacy groups pointed to this case as a reminder of the need for widespread education on safety, compassion, and effective communication. Schools, community centers, and social services increasingly emphasize nonviolent approaches to discipline, recognizing that children who act out often need understanding and guidance, not punishment. While laws cannot undo the pain of loss, they can evolve to protect future generations more effectively. A child's life should be a promise of laughter, learning, and love. Dericka's story is a solemn reminder of how fragile that promise can be, and how vital it is for every caregiver, every community, and every system to uphold that promise with care. If there's one message we can carry forward, it's this: compassion should always guide our actions, especially when it comes to the young and vulnerable. Let us support one another in better understanding, educating, and nurturing the children entrusted to our care. If you found this exploration meaningful, consider subscribing for more thoughtful analysis of true crime cases, not to sensationalize, but to learn, to reflect, and to foster conversation that leads to change.